My brain. Too much
Welcome back to Where You Live with Gene and Tony. We're broadcasting live from the Concierge Landscape Studios. We're also brought to you this hour by Extreme Exteriors. And if you're just joining us, we are beginning to talk about some of the major legislation that's passed in Florida and Nevada. And we have got a lot of interesting things that have not happened here in Minnesota. But, boy, I tell you, give it a little time, and we'll probably see it here as well.
You know what's interesting? None of this is, like, totally foreign, because this legislation is being passed to resolve problems for HOAs that we have here. We have these problems in HOAs here, or these issues in the HOAs in Minnesota. We just don't have legislation to address all of these issues.
Yes. And if you're also a regular listener of the show, one thing that's different, we are broadcasting the show now during the week, which means we're not a live show. So if you have a comment about anything that you hear or something else that you just like to get an answer on, you can still contact us here at Where You Live. We've got a hotline. That number is 952-224-2668. And leave that message on voicemail, and we'll hear those comments and address that on the next week's following show. Mm-hmm. Or you can also write an email to me at Gene, Gene, at ncmgi.com, and we can get it that way as well. But let's, I tell you what, one other thing, a little housekeeping thing here before we get back to our story. And that is, I'd like to remind our listeners here in the first hour, we have a free subscription. It's a bi-monthly newsletter called What's New. A lot of the topics we cover on the radio show are covered in further detail, and then we cover other topics that we can't even get to because there is more stuff. It is with this show. It's great because it's always trying to put 20 pounds in a 3-pound bag.
It's kind of surprising, isn't it, since we've been doing this show, to see how much is out there and how much is going on within and around homeowner associations. Oh, yeah. It's been an eye-opener.
And we get a lot of great stuff from you, our listeners, that are keeping track of stuff and emailing and sending things on to our attention to bring up on a future show, too. Yep. So we appreciate that very much. But that newsletter is yours free for the asking. Call us, though, during the week at New Concepts at 952-922-2500. Ask for Courtney, and she'll make sure that you start receiving that subscription. Well, let's get back with Florida. We talked a little bit about the homeowner association having the ability to just snatch rental income.
Yep.
And, from
a delinquent owner.
Yep. And we said we kind of think that's a good thing.
Yeah, I hate to see new legislation passed, but this has got to help homeowner associations to have this source of income. Yeah.
And, and one of the reasons why I think this is important, though, Tony, is because I know there's been a lot of debate, and we've seen that, too, with different courts, Supreme Courts in different states will act differently in terms of what is this entity called a homeowner association. Some of them deal with it more like a business entity, and it is because it's a nonprofit corporation. Others have also dealt with it like a government, as a sort of a layer of government as well. Yep. And it really is that as well.
Some judiciaries deal with it as though it were a landlord entity as well.
And that I would disagree with.
That's the least accurate.
It is. But the idea or the notion of an association like a government agency, like a municipality, I can see that because in a very real way, a lot of times you've had that very thing happen. A city, a municipality will say, if we're going to allow this tract of land open to building a number of homes, instead of it being a city street, a street that we have to maintain and keep up, we pass that on to the association, so it's an association street. And so the association needs to maintain it. Mm-hmm. The association needs to keep it free for emergency vehicles and for use. And because of that, the city is taking away some of the functions that they've provided other homeowners. And when they do that, the one thing I don't like that I've seen to date is that unlike a home where someone doesn't pay their property taxes, that always stays with the property. And so whoever's the new person picking up the property, they've got to pay those back taxes
on a single family home
if they want to keep it.
Sure.
In an association, it's not that way, and I think that would be. And I don't know why. I would like to see that happen all around the United States, the same thing, where it would be dealt with the same way.
And you're not talking about property taxes in that case. You're talking about delinquent homeowner association fees,
the assessments,
which you can liken to property taxes because it's what the association is collecting to operate the community. That's a very interesting notion, and I'm surprised as well that when a new owner purchases that townhome, they don't have to pay off the delinquency from the previous owner. That it kind of just, the association has to still go after the previous owner.
If you stop and think about it, one of the things that I think would be really good about something like that is you wouldn't have to have all of the additional add-on legal attorney fees.
Yeah.
Now true. I know attorneys in dealing with this.
Don't let
industry.
Dan Greenstein hear you say this.
I know a number of other attorneys wouldn't necessarily like that because that's a big part of their business.
Sure.
But really, it would not be necessary.
That's right.
Because it would be automatically something that would an assessment that would stay with the property and would need to be paid off, just like the property taxes. To me, it makes sense, but boy, that's something that's a whole
That'd be a
discussion.
Big change. I have another thought about that.
Yeah.
Do you think that would help eliminate a lot of HOA foreclosures?
How so? What are you thinking?
Well, if the HOA knows that when that house is sold, they're going to get their delinquencies paid back, perhaps the HOA would not foreclose on the townhouse, would not go through the trouble and the bother of foreclosing if they know that delinquent assessment is going to stay with the property.
I think in certain cases that could be the case, and that would be up to the association.
Yeah.
But the other part that is probably a little bit more frail with the association versus the city, but maybe not, is that in the case of the association, it's so much smaller. And if you get just a few people not paying their assessments, it has a much bigger impact
That's true.
on the HOA as a whole compared to that same number of homes in a city.
In an entire city. That's a good point.
But if there's enough of people going into foreclosure and bankruptcy within the city's going to feel the same pinch as well.
That's right. And in fact, they are. With all the foreclosures that are going on right now.
You're right.
Yeah.
Well, let's get back to some of these other laws that were changed here in Florida. Tell me what you think here, Tony. Here's one that said the association now has the authority to ban someone from service on the board if they are a felon.
Well, it's interesting. I can understand the motivation behind that. But what does it mean, practically speaking? Does this mean that anyone who runs for the board of directors has to have a criminal background screen done?
Yeah, well,
Isn't that what it means? Otherwise, how do you know they're a felon?
Okay, well, that's a good point. I suppose that might be something that they would require then. But the association would say, if you're going to run for the board, here's something, another hoop you've got to go through. We want a background check before you consider running for the board. My thought is with a lot of people being not wanting to volunteer as it is, that extra hurdle could mean some people would say, never mind, I don't want to serve.
Or are you saying that they should welcome the felons?
Well, no.
No,
of course not.
I'm teasing.
Yeah, but I guess if it's something that is indeed known, yes, I think I think the case here, the way the intent of the law is that I get is that if someone runs for the board, gets elected, and is later found out to have been a felon, it is something where now, because of the law, the current board has the right to say, I'm sorry, we can ask you to step down.
Yeah.
And that's important if you're talking about white-collar crime, and the person's the treasurer of the homeowners association.
Yeah, sure. I can certainly understand that.
So
I can certainly understand.
I
just know
merit.
that there's going to have to be, this is going to evolve to a point where documentation needs to be provided and proven. It's just going to happen. Yeah. They're not going to be able to take people's word for it.
Tell me this one, too. It is now the homeowners are now allowed to speak at all board meetings. And what do you think about that?
Well, it's not very detailed in this article about what that means. In the state of Minnesota, or at least in the homeowners associations we always advise to have a homeowners forum at the top of the board meeting, correct? So that homeowners can attend the meeting and address the board directly. Couple good reasons for this. Homeowners tend to be respectful and rational when they're speaking to someone face-to-face. And secondly, it has more impact on the board when it comes from the homeowner. I mean, if a homeowner calls me and says, will you tell the board I want this? Certainly I will do that, but it doesn't have as much meaning if I go to the board. It has much more meaning if one of their constituents, one of their members says, this is what I think. So a homeowners forum is a great idea.
I agree with you. I think there is a little bit more to this, too, and we need to take another break. But when we come back, let's address that a little bit more, and then talk about some of the issues that are going on in Nevada, too. We're going to take a break right now. You're listening to Where You Live with Gene and Tony on AM 1280, The Patriot. We'll be back after this.